So let's start with Terry.
Okay.
If you'd like to introduce yourself, who you are, what you're up to.
I'm Terry Hernandez. I'm the executive director for Chrysalis. I've been here since 1997. Was the first staff person that was hired by the board that had operated pretty independently without any staff. So it was almost like starting my own company with about 8 bosses who had certain opinions about the way things should be done. And over time, it's evolved a little bit further to the ability of staff and me to make decisions. So it's been a long ride and a fun ride and lots of changes and ebbs and flows. What's remarkable to me now is we're dealing with a lot of the same things that we have been dealing with over time. So for girls and women, life doesn't get any easier.
And what was your path like before Chrysalis?
I was involved in, first of all, in a nonprofit position at the YMCA of Greater Des Moines. One of the things that sort of drew me to Chrysalis was I had heard about Chrysalis and put a grant application together to fund an after-school program for girls at the YMCA who were hanging around just looking for boyfriends. And this was a time when we were looking to reduce violence against girls and women as well as teen pregnancy. So the intent of the program was to get girls focused differently in ways that would be productive to their own futures and keep their eyes off of just the guys.
Well said.
And interestingly, we weren't even considered because the board looked at the name YMCA and said, nope, you're a men's organization, we won't consider funding you.
Interesting.
But that was really surprising to me because I was on a community project working with one of the founders, Senator Elaine Simoniak, and we were working on teen pregnancy prevention issues.
Wow.
Small world.
Wow. So then how did Chrysalis come into your vision and then that transition?
Part of my awareness was that I knew it existed. I didn't know very much about it. I knew it was a funding entity. And having time to work with Elaine Simoniak, she became president the year that they decided that they should hire a staff person. And she said, you know, Terry, this might be something you should take a look at. And she encouraged me to apply, and I did. I don't know how many other people applied, but it was a pretty fascinating process because the 3 founders were still there.
And you've now led in some capacity since 1997.
Yes.
That is amazing.
It's been hard to believe that it's been this long, but yes, and it's been a great journey.
It's seemingly just growing and growing, and it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
Brooke, Findley.
Yes.
Senior Director of Strategy and Impact. Tell us more about what you're up to here at Chrysalis, and what's your story?
So I started at Chrysalis in May of 2010, so I'm coming up on 15 years, which has flown by. I worked prior to this at a public policy consulting firm doing short-term project management on a variety of really important social causes. And Terry was on one of the boards that I staffed. And so I got to know Terry and know the work of Chrysalis. And I was really excited because I loved what I was doing, but it was difficult to switch from one issue to another. So I would be doing a project, say, on veterans and learn all about veteran services and needs and challenges and meet really fantastic people doing the work, and then the project would end. But my care never ended. And so I was really ready to focus on one particular issue. And the opportunity came up at Chrysalis, and so I'm lucky to be here.
Yeah, you're just a big empath. You had to focus that energy.
Right.
I can relate. Well, thank you so much. Can you tell us a little bit more about what Chrysalis is and who Chrysalis serves?
Chrysalis is a public charity. So when I began, I described it to people as the sort of generic United Way for girls and women. So the analogy was that we raise money and we invest in programs that serve the purpose of our mission. Building strength in girls and women, helping them develop leadership skills, financial literacy, helping them be successful. Mm-hmm. Shortly after I started, we had a donor who offered us funding to do something what she said would be meaningful. And the board, interestingly, had in mind the idea to create an after-school program for girls. So this piggybacked with my interest in reaching teen girls. Mm-hmm. And early after I started, then besides just granting money to girls and women's organizations, we created an after-school program in middle schools in 1998. And that has continued and expanded and reached more and more schools in the metro area. Mm. So our purpose is to raise money in order to work with the local agencies in the 3-county, Polk, Warren, and Dallas area to serve the needs of women that would impair them from getting ahead or being successful or having a fulfilling life. And many of the agencies that we fund are the same agencies that we have funded over time. We also have an opportunity to fund new and innovative agencies. And then our after-school program, that was one of the connections that Brooke and I first made, and she has taken over managing and supervising the after-school program. We've also added a high school mentoring program. Yeah. So after school sort of pushed out on both ends. We were in middle school, we added 5th grade, and then we thought we can't just leave girls behind after 8th or 9th grade. We wanted to include high school, which has subsequently also included college-age young women who just didn't want to stop mentoring younger girls.
Yes, I love that. What are some of the kind of principal lessons, skill sets that you identify as essential for young girls and women, maybe especially in the after-school program? What would you say are core?
So I think the way that we look at providing these core services really are a matter of, I like to call it building the toolbox or filling the toolbox. I imagine a backpack. And, we're only working with young people for a certain amount of time. But what we're really preparing them for are all the different junctures of life where they'll be making a decision. And those decisions have big consequences. Women's decisions have big consequences. So we're looking at building resilience. And resilience really gets into that feeling of grit or strength, just as much as surviving or coming back from something. So we're looking to build how do you do that? You build your sense of self. We build communication skills. We build the ability to stand up for what you think is right, and hopefully that's yourself. We also look at what's going to help a girl grow these skills. So we're looking for connectedness to caring adults. We are looking for economic empowerment. And that's really important because it includes financial literacy, but it's also about recognizing that what is your relationship with money? Women and money is a common issue. So how can we empower girls to think about money differently and think about that related to independence and equity? And finally, leadership, something that is just, especially at that age, difficult to have those opportunities. So those are our 4 core pieces of our after-school program.
Yeah, I love that. This is something we have touched on before, and I loved the answers that you gave in the past. How are younger generations reshaping the concept of leadership, in your opinion?
You want go first?
You start.
All right. I think the younger generation is looking at Leadership is much more of a shared responsibility.
Mm.
I do not see as many students needing to be the boss or in the middle of everything, but also looking at what makes someone an individual and how can we celebrate that individuality. I think this has a lot to do with the growing diversity of our classrooms and the notion that nobody has all of the information and no one has the exact right answer.
Yeah. So you're suggesting younger people are becoming more aware to that truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that.
And the concept of leading versus managing. So I think in general, I believe that women have more of an innate sense of bringing people together and collaborating. So leading to them isn't necessarily being the authoritarian. It is being the inspirer and the influencer.
Absolutely.
And the guide and the coach. So it's all of those components of leadership that I think women have always demonstrated that girls are now showing.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Like they're the curators of the steam engine.
Absolutely.
Tell me about some of the unique struggles that women and girls are facing today, and then maybe we could touch on some of the parallels that you're seeing from when you first started.
Well, the biggest thing obviously is social media. And when I started at Chrysalis, it wasn't a thing. So, as recently as the late 90s and early 2000s, everybody didn't carry a cell phone. There wasn't a lot of information available on the internet, where today it's 24/7. It's always in girls' faces, negative and positive, and I think more to the negative is a comparison. So for younger girls to aspire to be someone or something, often the internet tells them you need to be thin, you need to be white, you need to be wealthy, you need to have a lot of friends, whatever the case might be, which is pigeonholing the idea of being an individual for a girl or a woman. And we constantly want to remind parents and guardians and teachers and adults to monitor what girls are seeing on the internet, because they may not be able to distinguish, is this valid, is this not? That for me then results in those issues around mental health problems, anxiety, depression, eating disorders, all of those sorts of pieces that can happen when a girl feels unworthy or not enough.
Yeah. Social media's got to be, king in all the ways.
Absolutely.
Of all the problems.
I would say that one of the things that I've thought a lot about recently is I will go back to the book Reviving Ophelia, which is not, by no means a new book, but it was sort of a bedrock of building the Chrysalis After School program when it started. And one of the key messages in that book is that it may help if you come from a super stable family with wealth and in a safe neighborhood and all those things. That may help, but the truth is that at this age, sociological factors, psychological factors, chemical factors, any girl can go down a path that could be harder, more destructive, slow her down.
Yeah.
So as much as we can say, well, we've got these things going for us, so we're going to be okay. This can happen to anybody. Any of those things that can get a young person off track can happen to anybody. And I think one of the things I see is that the factors or the experiences may be changing. So we didn't have social media. And now we do. And so there's this new way of seeing this come out. But the physiology is still there.
Yeah.
So we're working from the same space.
Sure.
Just with new factors.
Yeah, absolutely. And then tell me more about some of the issues that have just, kind of lingered over the years that are seemingly getting worse. Maybe they were better for a while and back again.
Well, misogyny and negative views of women or sexualizing women has always been a problem and seems to be more so, as well as devaluing women in the workplace, in the home, just in the public sector. So I think those are some pieces that are prevalent and remain, as much so as violence against girls and women, equal pay, equal rights, and more recently, reproductive rights. That for me is something that just was astounding that, after 50 years of being able to make my own decisions about whether or not to have children, that right was taken away from women. And I think that's been much more damaging than we even begin to know, because we don't hear about all of the stories of the dangers of unanticipated pregnancy, undesired pregnancy. So I think that issue has really been a milestone for women that was flipped on its head.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some kind of intuitive or easy ways people can support women and girls, if not Chrysalis, but just the women and girls in their lives?
I think everybody that values the contribution of girls and women is a feminist, whether they want to consider themselves a feminist or not. But being able to understand that we're all on the same playing field. No one is the same. Men are not the same as other men. Women are not the same as men. Women are not the same as other women. Or whatever your gender persuasion.
I love that.
So I think for everyone to have the ability to determine their own future, their own success plan, that is the most valuable tool I think we can provide people. So our message is, until you value every single person, particularly those that tend to be devalued in some way, then we'll never have an equal playing field.
Right. Yeah.
And I would add one thing to that, just on the day-to-day, is don't get lazy. I think that there is, I'm an elder millennial, and so I think that we believe that we're, so smart when it comes to all of this stuff.
Sure.
But the truth is that everyone is at risk for falling into believing stereotypes and into what I think of as sort of cheaper, lazy language. So, and we're passing that on to young people. So there's a lot of what I would say like cheap feminist language, like girl boss or trite sayings, things like that. They don't follow with action the way that Terry's talking about. And trying to avoid those and really have meaningful conversations. That'll go a long way.
That's really powerful. One of the things that popped into my head was how the hustle culture has kind of invaded female entrepreneurship. I mean, I have gone through this cycle myself and I'm kind of coming out of it, thank God. But I had a couple of years there where I was like, I can sleep when I'm dead. I can do all the things. And I did feel like the emergence of female entrepreneurship on social media was littering my algorithm, which took away, I think, some of the softness and femininity that is innate to me. Thank God I'm coming back to myself. But yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a lot of toxic language and like these buzzwords
and competition.
Absolutely.
I think we as women don't often realize how we undermine other women by criticizing.
Yeah.
And often we criticize things that maybe don't have a thing to do with their ability to lead or contribute.
Yeah.
It's more physical things. It's more behavioral things. It's more the way we talk. So if you think about women who have run for higher office, oftentimes the criticism is the way they speak, the way they behave, the way they dress.
Yeah.
And you don't as often hear that about men.
Right.
So for us to be able to sort of call ourselves and call other people out on that helps build awareness that, we might say to someone, would you say that to a man? Would you say that to a young boy? And have them think in those terms.
Yeah.
As opposed to just letting some maybe passing comment go by without recognizing what that does.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a lot of systemic patterns around the fact that we do, and I'm going to throw out there that we hold women to a higher standard in situations because we think that they should know better. We, have the boys will be boys, but women should know better. An example that years ago we had a board member that did a lot of work out at the women's correctional facility. And I think that she was quoting maybe a warden when she said that the governments lock up men that they're scared of, but they lock up women that they're mad at. And that hit hard because we think about a lot of women are incarcerated for, choices that they made that we're not scared they're going to hurt us, but we're mad at their choice. We're mad at what they did. And so are punishing them at the same rate we punish someone that we may be afraid of and that doesn't feel safe to be around.
Wow. That's powerful. Amazing. As the language of boys and men come into the conversation, how can men contribute to advancing Chrysalis's mission?
Well, they certainly can support us, financially, be an advocate for girls and women, be a good ally, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in the family, whether it's supporting a spouse or a child or a peer, that, understanding that you're not in competition against everybody. And, I can think of certain situations where we perpetuate these stereotypes as an example about whether to have 2 dolls or 30 dolls. And, regardless of what you think about the commentary from the president, you have to remember that that girl could easily prefer Lego toys or fishing, equipment or something else, instead of perpetuating the stereotype that all girls want to play with dolls.
And wear dresses or makeup
Exactly.
or have their hair a certain way. Sure.
So we try to help adults think about, first of all, being a role model, and second of all, think about how you're talking to girls and young women. So if it's your granddaughter, don't ask her if she has a boyfriend or compliment her on how beautiful she is. Think about ways to appreciate how kind she is or how smart she is or what a clever idea she has.
Yeah.
Because then you're emphasizing something that is her innate persona. What I tell people is, I didn't choose to be born in this body, nor did anybody else. So for you to belittle someone, ignore someone, criticize someone, abuse someone, has nothing to do with the choices that they made to be who they are.
Yeah.
I think that extends really well into our non-binary and trans friends. Although that is not what we're experts in here at Chrysalis, I think the issues that we work on have a lot of similarities and hold a lot of space for folks that are really experiencing a lot of the same cultural issues that women are in this time.
Yeah. It's like just kind of let people be, right, without criticism. And also praise. I think they're both tricky things to give. because they kind of set a bar that is then being presumptuous of that individual's bar and projecting your own standards onto them, which I just think leads to a lot of competition and confusion. And while we're on the topic of men, are there any things that you wish parents of little boys could do differently to sprout more allying men?
Well, one thing obviously is be a role model.
Mm-hmm.
So kids, regardless of gender, are watching what adults do. So if you as a man in the household are criticizing or abusing or harming
Mm-hmm.
your wife, that's what your son will learn.
Mm-hmm.
I also have just this strong sense that the sports analogies and sports itself breeds a sense of violence is okay.
Yeah.
And some of the sports metaphors, like knock their head off,
Mm-hmm.
kill them,
Mm-hmm.
those sorts of things, and the way people behave, men and women, at sporting events or with those concepts in mind are very damaging because they make it okay.
Mm-hmm.
So for a man to influence a child, helping talk through the things that, if it's a little boy, what they see and what they think about that, and is that right or is that real, or how do you feel about the fact that this player was hurt because of the anger on the field. So it's just different ways of helping kids especially interpret the world around them and define for themselves what's true and right as opposed to what's maybe the norm.
Yeah, absolutely. As a mother of boys,
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to me that, and so far so good, they are really empathetic. And I've always kind of demanded that of them, especially when it comes to me and taking care of mom.
Yes.
And, I think boys need to be given space to feel their feelings and not be told, tough it up, rub some dirt on it, walk it off. In a way, girls might be, coddled or not. But boys do, I think, deserve that same sensitivity, so that they can then have the freedom to think empathetically about other people.
And they need to see it,
Yes.
in men and
Yes.
boys. They
Absolutely.
need to, they need to witness men who are in pain, who are able to exhibit that sadness.
Yes, absolutely.
I would say that one of the things that we can do that we sometimes skip by, especially with little boys, is that most of these individuals will probably end up being part of families when they grow in some form or another. And we skip the part of teaching them how to be good partners. And you two were both talking a little bit about that with empathy and understanding feelings, but also how that pretend play time in that development doesn't have to be all, army men and football players. But actually, years ago, I bought a doll for one of my nephews, and his dad said, "Oh, why did you get him that? I'm really uncomfortable." And I said, "What are you worried about? That he's going to grow up to be a good dad like you?" And so what are you afraid of? You changed diapers, you did this stuff. So
Yeah, absolutely, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's buy boys more dolls.
yes.
You heard it here first.
Amen. And more than 3. They can have 30.
I love it. Let's talk about some recent experiences that have just reinforced your work. If you've got examples of girls you want, we can leave anonymous, or things politically or anything. What's reinforcing your drive and commitment?
I think seeing the appreciation of girls and women more publicly.
Absolutely.
So one thing I think that's been great, especially here in central Iowa, is having a superstar woman basketball professional.
Yeah.
And the fact that that's sort of opened the field
Mm.
to all women who are competitive,
Mm.
who either play a sport or enjoy watching a sport. That has been a remarkable turn of events because it's made it popular and desirable and okay.
Mm.
So I think that in itself was pretty turnkey that people maybe didn't realize
Yeah,
as it was happening.
absolutely.
There, right when you said that, a certain story popped into my mind. There is a student that we've had the great fortune of knowing for a long time. She started out in one of our Chrysalis after school programs in middle school, and it was at an age where she was kind of switching schools, and came from the African diaspora originally. And I remember she went to this new school and she said, you know what? Yeah, there were Africans there, but they weren't my Africans.
Mm.
I was just as, I might as well have been the only person of color in that school. I had no friends, no connections. She talked about eating lunch in the bathroom because she didn't feel welcome or safe. So that's where she's starting. And also had lots of friends who were having a great time, not going to school, getting in trouble, came from a family that was pretty strapped for time and space and attention. And she was kind of enjoying sort of getting in trouble a little bit, being I don't want to say a bad kid. She would have said that. And her Chrysalis after school facilitator said, hey, first of all, I really want you in this group. And second of all, I don't see you the way that you are choosing to behave right now. I just don't see that. And not only did the students stay in Chrysalis after school, but really came back to school fully.
Yeah.
Then volunteered when she was in high school back at that program, became one of our high school mentors when the time came. Also participated as a senior mentor. She started going to DMAC. At that point, when she started going to DMAC, she shared that out of kind of her group of friends from school in her neighborhood, she was the only one not currently pregnant or parenting.
Oh, wow.
At that time. So,
wow.
Definitely trying to do things differently, and went and through the pandemic went through DMAC and then transferred to Central College.
Amazing.
And is graduating next week.
Oh my gosh.
And is, it's a hard process for anyone. But she, at every turn, has just found ways to go about it.
Yeah.
And, it helps that she's a really lovely person and has had lots of folks around her that support her. Even, she was working a part-time job, and one of her coworkers was the person that moved her into college because they said, I can drive you over there. And we could not be more proud of her. And it's just... there are hundreds, thankfully, of examples just like her.
I love that. I wanna touch on quick how important is just that one person intercepting in a moment in time, like the after school organizer who was like, I don't see you the way you're behaving. Even just that one encounter with an adult. How influential do you think that is on?
That was pivotal.
Yeah.
And that's just one incidence of something like that happening. So one person suggesting to you that you're better than that, or you can do that, or here's what I see for you.
Yeah.
Especially an adult that you trust, which is what we work to do in our after school programs, is build those relationships with trusted adults who can tell them things that they maybe aren't ready to hear, but help them make decisions.
Yeah.
One of our facilitators used to say to the girls, you have to start to think for yourself, or someone else will do the thinking for you.
Yeah.
And it took them a while to understand that, yeah, I have the right to choose who touches me and who doesn't, and who says something to me and who I won't allow to treat me that way.
Yeah.
And it takes that constant reinforcement for, especially for girls, as they're finding themselves and getting, I think we say, giving them a voice, giving them the toolkit, but then always having a backup, always having someone. I think there are a number of them that still contact you or contact their teacher or their facilitator from after school, because you've been the instrumental person in their life.
And I would also want to say it's not just for people who may be experiencing challenges. I think completely on the other side, we also work with students who are high achievers, who are, I mean, our future, the people that we're going to go to see for our doctors, our lawyers, our judges. And those students also have reported appreciating what we do here at Chrysalis, because on that other end, just because someone is a high performer or, you know, comes from a fantastically supportive and resourced family, it doesn't mean that things are any easier when it comes to the things that women and girls really struggle with, especially concerning identity, stress, mental health. We can really play a role for all.
I think that's the beauty of the after school program. And girls mention, these are girls from all walks of life that become part of our sisterhood in this group. So it's very likely girls that they may never have had contact with, and now they are strong friends, supportive of each other, and they realize that. So that really opens the door for them to have relationships that form that otherwise would never have occurred. And I think that's another thing to be really proud about.
Absolutely. I love that. Are there any current challenges facing Chrysalis? And how are you addressing them, if so?
I think the challenge of trying to wrap our arms around what can truly make a difference. Our after school program, I think, is the best prevention program possible for girls and young women. So anything you can do with girls and young women to keep them on track and keep them focused ahead and give them hope, I think is the key. For our grant making program, we fund organizations that sometimes are struggling, especially when they can't anticipate budget cuts, staffing changes, executive orders, etc. And so there have been a number of agencies who have been dramatically affected by the current environment. And I think that's a challenge for us, because we're trying to think, what can we do? What can we be helpful with? If it's not money, is there a way to be a good coach, a good counsel? So one way that we've rectified that is building an alliance of different women's organizations that, like the after school program, get together and support each other and offer help and share ideas and sometimes collaborate on projects. So that, sometimes I worry that we're not including enough organizations that are out there struggling. So I think that for me is the biggest challenge, is to encourage organizations, whether they need funding or not. You do need a team of peers.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. We'll end with the two questions that we went over last time. We'll start with kind of a more negative and then move to the positive. What is most worrying to you about today's world?
You want to start?
The first thing that came to mind, and it's, I think, also probably an answer to your last question a little bit as well. What's most worrying to me is that when there is uncertainty in our world, whether it be financial or social, that people will start kind of circling the wagons around themselves. And when there's a notion of scarcity or fear, that we will not be able to do as much for those that are going to come after us. If people do feel scared or uncertain or closed off, that organizations like Chrysalis will not be able to have the impact, either because of funding to Chrysalis or just time and attention to be open to what we're all learning together. So I think that uncertainty and fear on a grand scale will affect our work.
Absolutely. I think there's so much data that goes into the effect of scarcity mindset and feeling lack as opposed to abundance
and lack of hope. Not being able to envision anything different than what you're experiencing right now, to me, is also a huge challenge, especially when things keep getting much more difficult or they're much more threatened. I mean, that for me is a huge issue for everyone when they're facing either financial devastation, loss of a job, who knows, lack of support. There are a lot of people, especially girls and women-headed families, who are out fending for themselves now because the support for certain services is not going to be there.
Yeah.
And how can you have hope when you're barely hanging on?
Yeah. And then also you don't have the skills, or you maybe haven't practiced.
Right.
Seeing yourself in a different place and therefore taking the steps to get there. Because I do think that is a skill that you have to be introduced to or influenced.
Absolutely.
On the flip side, what keeps you ladies motivated and hopeful?
Well, hope is the word again. I think you have to be optimistic in times like this, especially because if you get mired in all the negativity, you just somewhat stifle yourself from being creative and moving forward. So I am hopeful when I hear, how the girls are responding in after school programs, or how women are supporting each other, or how people are finding that they can push back against things that they disagree with or feel are unfair.
Yeah.
So that gives me hope that that there is a caring world. And if nothing more for us, my philosophy is we want people just to care about other people. We want them to care about those that are in service to other people. Whether you appreciate it or not, just care about it.
Yeah.
I think for me, I have the opportunity to spend a lot of time with young people. And I am so happily surprised by how kind and open and accepting and curious young people are. And I think that the world that our children are being raised in is complex, but it also is producing a lot of opportunities for the future. I just was looking back at an old video, and my daughter was wearing a shirt that said, "We're the ones that you've been waiting for." And I really believe that we're doing the right things.
I love it. Well, the mission is powerful. You ladies are powerful.
Thank you.
Tell us more about how people can get involved with Chrysalis.
Well, we can always use financial support, of course. And we're one of the very few organizations that takes any funding we receive and returns it to the community.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me is a great help to us to be able to expand our school program or support more organizations.
Mm-hmm.
You can also attend events. We have a number of events throughout the year, topped by our Inspired event coming up this fall. So on October 10th, you can join us for a luncheon where we'll feature a remarkable woman. This year, Valerie Plain, who was a covert CIA officer who was outed publicly and dramatically by the White House a few decades ago. And so her story of surviving that and continuing to move forward, doing things that support and help society. Those are the types of things that people can help with, as well as some of the tools that we've talked about here, appreciating girls and women for accomplishments or for behaviors. And that, I think, advocates for other girls and women, and it also provides a good model to other people.
Absolutely.
And I would add, following us on social media, likes don't cost you anything, but they certainly help, just like sharing and also hopefully taking part in our work through that process.
Yeah.
We are very fortunate that our founder provided an endowment when she died that covers all of our operational expenses. So 100% of the funds that we receive go right back into the community, into those programs we've been talking about, and make an incredible difference. And so simply by being a part of our community is the first step.
I love it. Well, we will be sure to link all of the ways you can find Chrysalis. Ladies, thank you so much for your time today.
It's been a joy. Thank you.
Absolutely.